Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Today is April 26th. This is the multi-large working group weekly sync. So let's get started from the agenda. First one is from me. The service discovery sometimes fails inside of Kubernetes. That issue is pretty close to be resolved. The solution was identified and verified in staging was promising and will be rolled out to production. Amy, you want to verbalize your comment?
Yeah, so just repeat that really yeah, we're aiming to roll this out to production this week. And then, so as it stands right now, I think we need this into production to be fully, to see the errors disappear. So hopefully this will solve them. But if it doesn't, it's still a good change because it simplifies the architecture. So we're very confident that we want to roll this out, but hopefully it will also fix this problem.
What's the impact of the service discovery failing? Is it like outages or?
We believe so. So we've had a couple of incidents over the last few months that it's difficult to say for certain, but yeah, we suspect is this issue causes the incident to happen. Yeah, which is really why we don't want to push the API service out to production until we fix this, just because of the unknowns and the increased number of amount of traffic we'll be pushing through. Just feels like if it is causing a small number of incidents, we suspect that would become a larger number of incidents if we didn't fix it.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
So it's
Amy.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I just had a question on the sort of related to Josh's about it looks like what DNS is typically what fails. I was just kind of curious, like I saw Jason's comment in the issue and was curious if there was any more context around, is it always DNS first or is it like a combination of others?
I believe it's always DNS. So what we suspect is related to is with the way the pods coming in and out means that things can't talk to each other. So we're going to try and lock those together.
Gotcha.
So I think it's always a DNS failure, but I think it's just simply related to things starting to talk to each other and a pod rotating out, and which is normal in Kubernetes, but not ideal in this case. So the simple fix that we're going for is to keep things within their node pools, which hopefully means that if one thing's up and it starts talking to the second thing, they're either both still online or they both rotate out together.
Gotcha.
Think of it like the problem was kind of like a shift change, right? If your shifts changed online with when your managers change shift, somebody kind of just loses a message, right? So it is DNS, but it's basically because somebody went to talk to somebody, but they left 5 minutes ago for lunch and the new manager doesn't come in for an hour.
Got
That's
it.
a nice analogy.
Okay, if no more questions, let's move on to the second bullet. Amy, over to you.
Yes, thank you. So yes, thanks to distribution, we now have sort of the last known blocker that we had, which was the notification secret only populated during geo configuration. That's now resolved. And so we are now working towards getting some API service traffic running into Kubernetes on Canary. So I'm hoping we'll see that this week. But at the moment, as far as we know, there are no blockers to us doing this.
Questions? Okay, cool. Next one, also yours.
Thank you. Yes. So one thing that's probably interrupted our scheduling a little bit of when we push the traffic is one of the tasks we went through sort of in preparation for the moving over is comparing our Nginx config between Omnibus and Kubernetes. Now, unfortunately, we found a difference that hasn't been trivial to replicate. We think we have a fix that we're working on, but we've sort of got dug into sort of request buffering here. And at the moment, the sort of short version is we are working on it and we think we know what we need to do. We don't need any extra help. We don't believe. And I hope it'll stay that way. But if we do, there's potentially a question around the investigation. Stan has pointed out there's possibly an inconsistency in omnibus request buffering. So that's probably the only question mark at the moment. If that does turn out to be the case, we may need some development help just to confirm if that's expected and why we have it like that. What we're focusing on right now is to just try and replicate the same. Like presumably it seems to work. So we're going to try and get the same setup running on Kubernetes so we can push forward. So I will, I'll probably just give an async update on this in the Slack channel once we hear more on this. But for now, that's kind of where we're focusing our time.
Cool. So that would be if you need development help, that looks like that would be the distribution team. Is that correct, Stephen and Jason?
Sounds like if it's an omnibus, it's a good chance that we'd be involved. So.
Yeah.
It largely comes down to the idiosyncrasies between how Nginx functions on a VM versus how it functions inside of the Nginx ingress controller. The omnibus can fully orchestrate the content on a VM. That's not the case in the Nginx ingress controller. So it's going to come down to how do we configure the ingresses in the right way and get the right configurations in place and testing some of those, some of the workarounds to make direct edits also mean zero testing, which if you bork it, then it is instantaneously breaking all of Nginx because the configuration is invalid. So we have to figure out if there's a good way to do it, what we can improve, if we can do anything upstream.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to number 4, Camille and.
Yeah, I guess I can voice this. So with Pages, we currently not depending on the NFS in production. So we're not serving from it and we are not updating content on it. And there are some issues like production changes to actually get rid of NFS first on staging and then on production and first on Pages servers and then on Sidekick servers. And also one change about basically changing a config flag in production. Yeah, so it would be nice to get some SRE attention. And after we close this, there are a few more MRs on docs and stuff, but we can largely call like the Pages migration complete.
Yeah, thank you, Vlad. So I will work with Brent to see if we can get some SRE help here to hook up with you. So stay tuned. Right now, I know that SRE team largely is helping the PG12 upgrade, but I will try to find out someone to engage with you so that we can keep this moving.
Just a couple of comments. I think, yeah, just a couple of comments. I think Igor is out, and I'm not sure if Matt is aware that he should be looking at this. I think maybe I can help if Matt isn't working on this. So I'll talk to Brent about it.
Thank you very much.
Also, it would be nice if we can get something done this week because I'll be out the whole next week.
Okay. Yeah, good to know. Okay. Any more questions about this? Okay, then what's happening next? Over to you, Amy.
Thank you. So yeah, just to sort of reiterate really that our plan is once we've got the API service up and running, we'll be shifting over to working out how to migrate the web nodes into Kubernetes.
Cool. Thank you. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Discussion topics. Jason, you're typing, but do you want to just verbalize?
Yeah. So I've seen a couple of issues recently regarding disabling Redis key watcher for some of the workhorse instances. Specifically, they seem to be related to production and the load on Redis because there's some workhorse that don't need to be doing this functionality. Do we know exactly what the priorities are on this are? so that I can make sure that my team gets involved. There's some funniness with how we do it in Omnibus versus how we would do it in the charts, and I just want to make sure we end up on the same page. Yes, we do have issues. I'm literally trying to find them. All of a sudden my brain went, oh, I should ask about that.
I'm asking because, like, I think yes, definitely we can disable that, but it also seems like that we're gonna be running different workhorses in the production. So the question is, like, will it maybe break other functions at some point because we disabled it now? So it's kind of related. Can we somehow optimize that simply to not be a problem?
Right. And like the proposed method right now is literally if you say not to use key watcher to disable all of the Redis configuration. So
I mean, this is one of the ways, but it first feels pretty risky, to be honest. Like, since this is, I guess, Redis is like the requirement of the workhouse right now. So maybe I mean I can help like with the idea like how we could optimize that, but I think from my perspective I would rather aim on fixing workhorse rather than removing Redis or disabling Redis.
Okay, let's look at the follow-up with the issues to see which team actually can fix those workhorse issues. I know that workhorse is there is one nominal team that's owning it right now, but they probably cannot fix everything about the workhorse. But we'll find out the issues. I mean, the owners for each issues or the team who can work on each individual issue. So Jason, please get the issues here, and we may I will look into those issues to see where they fit.
yep, done.
Thank you. And Josh?
Yeah, it's an open question of when do we collectively think we should start working on sort of the next service to migrate over, I think, after API, which is, I believe it's Giddily. You know, I think we've had some anecdotal feedback from customers that it hasn't necessarily performed or been optimized to run in Kubernetes. And so kind of wondering, given that knowledge and given that we think it's the next service to sort of shift, when's the right time to start spending some more time here with the Giddily roadmap and distribution and infra also involved.
Do we know roughly what will be involved? Like, is it like the API ones where we have kind of distribution work and then delivery work, or is there also some possible Giddily work that needs to happen before that?
I think the current concern stems from, go ahead, Jason, you're the
Right, the current, we have an issue open for this. Josh, can you grab that if you have it offhand? The current problem is it's not a well-defined operating environment. The way Kubernetes works, you have exactly this expectation, and when you go outside of it, you have a serious issue. We have customers that are, 500 users that have no problem because the way that their workflow patterns hit to get the Giddily instance, it doesn't overload it. We have customers who have 100 users and 1,500 CI jobs, which just destroys Giddily. And it doesn't matter if it's on a VM or in a container in Kubernetes, it smashes the poor thing to bits. So when we go to move us into Kubernetes for Giddily, we have to know what those workflows look like, how to control the load in Giddily, how to make sure we understand what patterns say I need to have Giddilys that have more room vertically or horizontally, and how to handle those things. Right now, we have no definition of any of that.
Do we have any, are there any kind of deadlines that we're working towards with this? Like, obviously, I know it's like, we want to do it and we'd like to do it as soon as possible, but is there any kind of business date that we're also aiming to hit?
don't think specifically. The reason I'm asking is A, so we don't block infra for the migration, right? This could take some time to resolve. It'll probably require Gitly, infra, and distribution all working together here in some way, shape, or form. And so that therefore, the more teams you get involved, and it tends to take longer to try to fix things. So trying to think ahead here so we don't get blocked for too long. And then also it's the last stateful service, I would say, of GitLab that runs in VMs. And so from a customer standpoint and architecture standpoint, it'd be nice to have it all running in Kubernetes well. Therefore, you could have your Redis and your database service like RDS and Elasticache running in AWS, and then everything else runs happily in Kubernetes would be a great state to get into. So I think to directly answer your question, I don't think there is a date at this point in time, other than just I'm trying to see if we can prioritize this work and then according to everyone's roadmaps, and then see what we can accelerate so that end result.
I guess the indefinite business impact would be the moving cloud native installation maturity. So Josh, is that kind of what you're thinking too?
Yeah, I think the maturity of the category is one, but also just the customer impact of, we're considering recommending the hybrid architecture for folks over the Helm chart because of one of the reasons is because we don't recommend running Gitly and Kubernetes right now. Right, and so that's we'd recommend customers to do that instead of the pure K8s install.
Okay.
Just sort of anchoring on the customer experience there, Dylan, as opposed to our category maturity.
So from a kind of roadmap point of view, what's the, assuming everyone's kind of slightly busy, what's the sort of first sensible time that, because I'm going to assume that there's some bits at the beginning where people need to sit down and bash their heads against it for a bit and we work out what we might need to actually solve. So is that the sort of thing we can schedule in?
Yeah, I think to that end, we'll have to likely do some fact finding and investigation spikes to really get a handle on what's actually happening here. We could wait for infra to sort of be ready to pick it up, and then we could run a small shard in Kubernetes, and that's one way of doing it. Or we can try and staging, but I think Jason's comment, we kind of see this when we get more load. So we might, I don't know, if I'm trying to use the performance testing environment. I'm just open up the question here because it's, I think, the next stage. And so I think we likely would involve the Gitly team. Mark, I think you're on. Maybe infra, although if we can figure out a way to generate load and generate the failure scenarios without infra, we could potentially do it without your roadmap being impacted.
Yeah, I mean, given the fact that the next few months, we're finishing up stateless, and then also with the registry migration, we don't have this slotted in currently, so it'd probably be July at the earliest. Amy, correct me if I'm wrong there, but I was wondering maybe if Gitly could pick up some of the testing and staging where they can sort of help discover some of the gaps there.
I mean, yeah, I think it's something we should look into. I'm currently trying to figure out prioritization over the next few months. I know that we're doing some work for performance and infra dev things right now, trying to get that scheduled in. So I'm very happy to talk about potential of what we might be able to help with ahead of time that would smooth the transition if that's something we're looking to do. Right now, we're unclear what won't work. So it's sort of one of those things where we're going to have to try it and then sort of, peel the onion. We're going to have to figure out what's going on. So I don't know if we even have proven it doesn't work. I think it's one of those things that's right now somewhat hypothetical, and we're in the process of trying to investigate, what will happen when we actually load it up.
Yeah, I think the next step is getting a test environment set up and then load, and then actually driving load to it and seeing what happens. And doing it in Kubernetes with with resource limits set and things like that, and then just seeing what happens.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. I'll make that note in the issue just to make that clear. And then, I'm not sure if distribution or if Gitly is the right team to work on this. sort of this test harness. What do we think as far as, who can pick this one up? And then that might define the backlog too, to some degree.
Is that the building of test harness, or I'm thinking?
I think we already have some test harness for Gitly, where we can drive traffic as part of our performance testing that framework that like Grant has done. I'm not totally sure, but I think we already should likely be able to drive Gitly traffic, I would think.
Yeah, Grant's done a lot of really good work on like the reference architecture stuff, and I don't know if it's a direct drop in, but it should give us a good starting point to work with.
Mark, do you mind to follow up with Grant to see if the GET environment or the reference architecture is able to handle this testing infrastructure?
I mean, I can start asking questions. I just want to make sure I ask the right questions. So if there's anything specific people want to, get the answers to, I'll happily contact Grant. I know the reference architecture is working with Gitly cluster right now. So if that's what we need, then we have that. If we need something in addition, or there's specific features we need to make sure function correctly in that reference architecture, I'm not probably the best person to know what questions need to be asked, but I'm happy to do the legwork.
I think on the reference architecture, just one note there is we don't have a cloud native only reference architecture.
Right.
The reference architecture we have is the hybrid one, which runs Gitly on VMs.
Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't tried this. I think with Grant's performance tool and see what happens. So that that might be the easiest next step, is to see if we can get someone from quality maybe to run it and just see if it blows up or not. Okay.
So who's going to follow up with the QE team to just give it a try to see how the reference architecture works at this point?
In terms of how the reference architecture works at this point, the GPT is already being executed on GE generated environments in hybrid mode. So we already have the GPT being run in automated fashion as part of verification for the reference architectures.
Yeah, okay, so I'll comment on the issue. So as my next step, I think the decision point here is whether someone from quality or an engineer, but this is the GPT, and I think in general, so quality might make the most sense, they're most familiar with it. And then the question is whether Gitly or distribution does it. There's, I think, the distribution point here. And we can take this async if we want to, but I think that's the next step, to figure out who wants to run this test case and test scenario and see what happens.
Okay. Okay. I'll also have this. I'll also give Tanya a heads up on this.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. We are almost at the time. Is that all the topics we have today? Cool. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.